Yo, what's up, YouTube? It's your boy Isu. It is your boy Ninja, aka Izuku, and I'm back again with the same video I've just recorded 2 days ago. See, it ended up becoming 2 parts long. Not 2 parts, but 2 parts long. It was almost 2 hours long for one part, and I accidentally stopped it and then had to go and finish it on a different part. So and I just kept going instead of stopping when I got to the part where I was originally gonna stop. So I'm gonna redo it, and hopefully in less than an hour and 30, or exactly around an hour and 30. Hopefully not longer than that. Which I do have videos that are longer than an hour and 30, close to an hour and 50 long, if not longer than that. This video, I just tried to redo it, like legitimately. And I couldn't focus because I was looking at the TV, and then I forgot shit that I said before, but I should be alright. I mean, I didn't rewatch it because I don't need to. Like I said, I did it off the top of my head, and I remember how I did it. It's just I ended up doing a little too much, and I was trying to add shit that wasn't in there the first time, being stupid. So we're just gonna get right into it since we're almost 2 minutes in, and yeah, let's try to make this as long but short as possible. Now, ignore the background noise. That's my bed. This is my heater this time, not my fan. I got my fan turned off because it was a little too cold, and I ain't feel like wrapping myself up in that big ass blanket. So, yeah, we're gonna get right into it. That was my phone. I just tossed it on my bed. Now, we start this story off after Yurichi, well, didn't defeat Muzan. What the fuck? 1 second. Alright, I'm back. Now, like I was saying, yeah, after he let Muzan get away, well, didn't let him, but after Muzan got away, he would be down in the dumps as he'd go back to his friend, who is a part of the Komodo family, the guy we saw in the anime. Oh, yeah, by the way, I did not mention this, but from here on out, everyone in this story will be like 100 times stronger than they were inside canon, like the actual anime, and you will see what I mean. And it's only to level out Tanjiro's power, which will be growing hella a lot, and the coming characters, and there will be a lot of them. You will see why. Now, Yorichi would be sulking, talking to his friend, as his friend would ask him, why hasn't he gotten married and all this other stuff. He would explain to him what happened to his past family, and he would show his friend the Hinokami Kagura, the sun breathing techniques. But his friend would introduce Yorichi to his sister, who was also looking for a partner. But Yorichi at first was very hesitant. Every time he looked at the woman smile, it reminded him of his, well, dead. I don't know if she was his wife. I can't say, but I'm going to call her his wife. His deceased wife and child. And he couldn't bring himself to do it until one day he confided in her, and she also confided in him. They both had traumatic situations, as she had once lost a child. It was, damn, not an abortion. My dumbass almost said abortion. My fault. 1 second, bro. Okay, by the way, I'm not searching up anything today. Like I said, I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I'm legitimately, I've been sitting here for a little bit. I'm gonna just say a miscarriage. Damn, that is the word. How the fuck? Ain't no fucking way. I've been sitting here for. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. Now we're gonna try this again. She would explain to him how she had a miscarriage, and he would explain what happened to his wife and child. they would bond over this and their relationship would grow stronger. It would be strong enough that by their age, when they both became the age of 30, they would already have a son. Their son's name would be Takeru. Immediately, Yorichi became a house, like he would stay around the house. He had PTSD of what happened to his other child and wife. He didn't want that to happen to the Commodores, but that's when another woman would come around. This would be not from the Commodore clan. Like I said, yeah, and Yorichi, not obviously he's not one of those, you know. Yeah, he's not one of them, right? But he needed to get children out there because he wanted to have multiple children to be strong enough to take down Muzan. And he would ask his wife when she was thinking they could have another child. She would say it would be fine whenever, as her brother would tell him that since he's the last one of his clan, he should be thinking about, you know, basically what they were trying to get Sasuke to do. Where he, since he was the last Uchiha, they wanted him to, well, I don't know if it was explained in the anime. But yeah, basically they wanted him with a lot of women to birth a lot of Uchihas. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, yeah, his friend would recommend this, and Yorichi, being the loyal man he is, would say he won't do it. And by the way, this woman is a friend of his wife, well, now wife, and the wife would say that it's fine. She knows that he loves her, and he'd be a great father for the two children. And Yorichi, obviously knowing his friend is correct, would go along with it. He would, as he would also marry this woman. I know, it just can't happen that way. But I'm gonna say they're married because they say they are. Okay, good. Now, this would start the Sugi Kuni clan, like his last name on them, right? Like his actual family, because the first son is a Kamado. This son is a Sugi Kuni. They both would learn sun breathing. By the way, the Commodore family's son is only a month older than the other one. I said a month. Yeah. I'm gonna say they gave birth around the same time. She would give birth a month before the other lady. So the next woman. So scratch whatever I said before this. By the way, this is new. I didn't plan out the births. I just said he had a child and then had another one. And in the past one, I didn't go into detail. This is why part is a bit scuffed. Please, yeah, just hear me out, all right? So yeah, the two children would grow up. They would be the best of friends, but they would also be rivals since they both were learning the same technique, and they both were prodigies. The Commodore's family son would learn a bit quicker, just a little bit quicker than the other child, but suddenly the other child would gain the Demon Slayer mark, while as the Commodore family son didn't, and this accelerated hit the child's learning as he would grow way faster than right. And that's when Yorichi would officially put the Sugikuni clan and the Kamado family, like the Kamado family, under the Sugikuni clan, right? And so now they're one clan. And then he would end up finding out that his brother, even though a demon, would have, gotten a woman. He would have gotten a woman pregnant, and the woman would have had a son. This being Yuichiro and Muichiro's father, by the way. Or was it? I'm pretty sure it was their father. I could be wrong, but yeah, if I'm wrong, then you can, Let me know in the comments. But I'm pretty sure it was the dad. So that father would be added to the Sugi. Like he would be under their family too, since his brother is still a Komodo, whether or not demon or not, he's still a Komodo. I mean, I said a fucking Komodo. He's still a Sugi Kuni, right? And so the child, I mean the son, like by the way, he is not like, yeah, he's not like, it's not their father. Like what I'm trying to say is he is whatever, bro. Just know it's not their father. Yuichiro and Muichiro's father. It's like they're 500 years. So like great grandfather, some shit like that. Yeah. And yes, I know that if I remember correctly, Kokoshibo only had the son during that the time frame of we're not going there. All right, we're gonna say it happened earlier, all the way this time, right? And I'm gonna say the kid is the two children's age, right? He's not an adult. He is their age, like Yorichi's two sons' age, and by now the two kids are 14, and the youngest is the biggest prodigy. Yorichi, obviously knowing of the Demon Slayer mark, he doesn't know the downside since he was born with it. He just thought that, oh, this kid unlocked it early. That's cool, right? So they're both 14, and by now the youngest already mastered all 13 forms of sun breathing. He would go on to become the next leader as Yorichi would head out, obviously going to search for his brother, because by now, my bad. Because by now he is 50, and now he's down to take down his brother. He would apologize to his two wives that he won't be around any longer for, and they would understand, as his brother is a demon. They just prayed that he would come back safe, but they obviously knew after the first 10 years of him being gone, obviously he isn't dead yet, but they knew after the first 10 years he's probably not going to make it back alive, especially in their line of work. Being that age, it would be hard for anyone, even Yorichi, to kill demons, which is wrong. And by everyone, I mean every demon slayer is way stronger than what they were. The normal demons, they're okay ranked, and the upper moons, there are 7 of them. They're not just, it's not 6 like in canon. There are 7 upper moons in total. And the lower moons, well, I'm gonna say there is about 100 upper moons. No, I'm gonna say 50. Yeah. Nope. We're doing 25. Last change. There are 25 upper moon. I meant 25 lower moons and 7 upper moons currently, like in this generation. Okay. This would continue like this for the first 100 years. By the way, all 3 families have been grown. By the way, the son of Kokoshibo would learn moon breathing, and his son would learn mist breathing. He would be confused, but his next son would learn moon breathing, and the other sons of Yorichi's, they both would master sun breathing, try and teach it to their kids who couldn't learn it. So they would learn moon breathing from their uncle, and since they could use it, they would. These would be the 3 main breathing styles inside this clan, the Sugikuni clan: moon, mist, and sun breathing. The sun breathing users could obviously use other breathing styles, but the main one they used was sun breathing, but they couldn't use moon breathing as well, right? And sun breathing users are always 3 years, like they are 3 years apart. I mean, 3 generations apart. So like the first son doesn't have it, the second son doesn't have it, the third son will, or obviously the same goes for girls, right? And this would continue on until we get to Tanjiro and Nezuko, who are twins from the Komodo family in this one. Nezuko would be a prodigy. Tanjiro, on the other hand, wouldn't. Now, we go to a little reason why these two, like these three giant clans are still together. By the way, they're huge clans. All right, so the oldest of the Sugikuni clan, which is his second son, Yorichi's second son, this is him, right? He looks just like Yorichi. The first son also looks like this, but not exactly. He looks a bit different. He looks more mature compared to his brother, which is on the screen. Now, he would he would issue something to the Demon Slayer court, which, like, obviously it's still around. He would tell them that since people, because at first people were saying that he would be the weaker brother, and then when his oldest brother became weaker than him, well, grew, like his potential started to wane a little bit towards the end, and it took him a little bit longer to learn the 13th form than his brother, who learned it instantly after gaining his mark. He would tell the master that since everyone likes to pick fun at people, every year they have to at least train and send out one person from a generation of children to be a demon slayer. And the other families, they ate that up, since demon slayers make a lot of money. Well, Hashira do. I'm gonna say the other demon slayers also make a lot of money, since the demon slayer core, I'm gonna say they're a bunch of quadrillionaires. Why not? That's like, they got almost infinite funding, meaning they can give out money to families as if it were like, it was nothing, right? A few 100,000, and y'all take that and go on, right? Like, basically, the more demons a demon slayer killed, the more money they make. And obviously, they have to have proof. I said proof. So they take missions, and in this one, they take clothing or something. Like, since clothing is left by demons, and you can smell the scent of a demon if you are a demon slayer. Like, you can just feel the scent of a demon, right? And so they usually carry around these little bags to carry a piece of the cloth with them. And you can obviously tell that they aren't just bringing the same cloth, because the crows, they send it via crow. They cannot physically take the clothing with them, right? And obviously ain't no one trying to cheat the Demon Slayer course, since they're making money from it. Every 5 demons is like 1,000. Every 10 demons, 5,000. And it goes up like that, right? And so, some demon slayers, they're at 100 kills, and they're out here making, like, they made a lot of money from that. And so people are just sending out their children without regards for them, right? And the oldest brother was like, hey, this gotta stop. This ain't it. And by the way, the government is funding the Demon Slayer course, since they also have been, encountering demons, and, they want it to stop. And the Demon Slayer Corps, who is taking them down, the Demon Slayer Corps is getting sent billions of dollars yearly by the government, and they pay the Demon Slayers bi-monthly, or whenever, like, they have them on set up plans, and it's only the ones that can prove that, oh, I took down this demon, or I did this, and that, right? And the reason they can prove this is the crows, obviously the crows, since they talk, they can, like, the crows don't lie for their master. Like, no matter how cool they are with their master, they wouldn't lie to, the master of the Demon Slayer Corps, right? Like, not at all. So, obviously, even if they send in a piece of cloth, let's say they didn't kill the demon, they just somehow got a piece of its clothing. They send it by crow, the crow go, he didn't kill it, he just ran away after getting a piece of clothing. Not only would they be banished from the Demon Slayer Court, but they would be fined for it. And they would have to send their child, or the next generation's child, to come take their place. Now, you don't have to become a demon slayer unless your family is already like a demon slayer family. You're one of the clans that are known to be demon slayers, right? So a normal person isn't forced to become a demon slayer. You don't have to become a demon slayer. You can just say, no, we don't want to do that. But if you end up getting, hunted by demons and you call for the demon slayers, obviously they're not going to immediately jump to go save you. Sure, they're going to jump to go kill the demons, but if you die while they're trying to kill the demon, oh well, that's your fault, right? And I'm not saying that that's good, but that's just how they are. They don't care. And the older brother would ask his younger brother, is this really like cool? The older would ask his younger. I hope I said it that way. But yeah. So the younger brother would tell him it's fine, it's cool. You ain't gotta worry about it. The cousin would say that, yeah, it ain't nothing to it, you know? And so generation after generation after generation, there would be multiple heads to the three biggest clans like that are together. These three big, like these giants are working together. And by the way, by now, a lot of new breathing styles, not just the ones shown in the series, there will be a lot more, and I will explain them. Yeah, right? Now, we go into something before I go down to, Tanjiro and Nezuko. Yorichi's blade would be sent home. And it would be sent home by this demon. This demon being Kokoshiba. He would walk up and the three would instantly get on guard. The oldest would take the forefront. The youngest, who is the strongest, would be terrified. As he would say, "Father? No. Who are you? Why do you look like my dad?" But the oldest would say, "That's our uncle. That's Michikatsu Tsuchikuni." And Michikatsu would say the name is Kokoshibo and how he isn't here to fight. They're too weak to take him anyways. He would throw them Yorichi's blade, as he'd say, the blade looks like it's about to shatter and I don't care for it. Now, he would say, but I do want to test your power. The oldest would have caught the blade and looked at it. This blade was different. It was filled with demonic energy for some reason. And he would sheath the blade, but then he'd fall to his knees as if all his strength had been drained from his body. Nothing was working for him. He couldn't stand, he couldn't move. This blade had just sucked away everything. His knowledge of sun breathing, all of it gone. But this didn't stop him. He gripped the blade as it would glow purple. His blade would have shattered immediately out of his hand. That's why he is now using his father's blade. His father's blade would look like this. It had changed, but he doesn't care. He would unsheath the blade and rush Michikatsu, telling the other two to get back. But they would have rushed in with him, seeing as he doesn't look alright, and something about him is different. He would swing his blade, and the blade would crumble as soon as it would hit Michikatsu's blade. But then it would fix itself as he'd swing and cut across his chest. But he would Michikatsu would instantly heal. I'm gonna start back. I'm gonna either call him Michikatsu or Kokoshiba. Right? Why? Because I'm used to calling him Michikatsu. Yeah. But yeah. Kokoshiba would swing his blade at him, and the fragments would come off the blade and make like a shield, as it would block it, and he would go sliding back. Now, this is where he would gain memories of his father using this blade after losing sun breathing while fighting his brother. It just sort of happened. He couldn't use sun breathing, but with this new blade, he made 100 forms. Yes, you heard me. Yorichi would have made 100 forms. And the son knowing, since he already knows those 100, I'll make 100 more. And that's what he'd do. He'd fight Michikatsu or Kokoshibo on equal footing, making 100 forms in that span. but it wasn't enough to beat him. So he'd spin and dodge. He'd make another 100, and then another, and then he'd get stabbed through the chest after he'd finished his 500th form. Now, this is when the younger brother would finally awaken from his whatever the fuck trance he was in, and he'd cut off Michikatsu's arm, as the cousin would have dashed in, and he would have swung and cut off the other one, and they would kick off Kokoshibo and grab the oldest. They would rush him inside, and they'd look at him as the blade he was holding would have, it would have crumbled as soon as he'd let it go. He'd say, "You two run away. Take everyone and go to this location." By the way, their children are still children at this moment. They aren't old enough. Like I said, they aren't like full grown adults yet, but they have children, right? So, the two would begrudgingly have to do it. They would even gather his wife and they would tell her they have to go. The oldest would hold out his hand as the blade would fly into it, as the shards would start to float behind him as he'd walk out. And Michikatsu, who was now feeling the same aura he felt from his brother when his blade initially transformed, he would say, "I have to kill him and fast." But that's when the oldest would say, "Form." He would say, "Form. What should I call this style? Fuck it, I can't think straight right now. I'll let my kids or someone else name it. Whoever finds this blade next, you name the form." And the shards would start to shoot out at him as he'd say Form 501. As he'd say demonic shard rain. As all of these shards would fly at Michikatsu or Kokoshibo, who would get serious as when he did against Yoriichi. By the way, Yoriichi still died the same way. Yoriichi is what would have been 80 around this time. Yeah, and the two sons are like, I'm gonna say 21. So yeah, they're full grown adults, but their children aren't, okay? Yeah, I kind of messed up what I was saying. Yeah. So yeah, they're like 21 or 31. They're around one of those two ages. Because I say he was gone at 50 and they were like, what, teenagers? So yeah, around 21, 31. So, something like that. They're like somewhere in between that. Like 29 maybe, 28, something like that, right? So, he would keep shooting these shards as there are 1,000 pieces, so they're rapidly just firing back. He'd deflect them using his moon breathing. By the way, they can actually use the moons as well. If you didn't know, Michikatsu or Kokoshibo's actual demon art isn't the moons. If I remember correctly, it isn't the crescent. Well, isn't just the crescent moons, or isn't the crescent moons. It's one of the two. But I know his blade, when it transforms, that's a part, like that's his transformation, where he gets, he looks all like, the sword when it turns weird looking, it gains all the blades and junk. It allows for him to swing. It enhances his range. As like everyone knows, he wanted to be like Yoriichi or be better than Yoriichi. So Yoriichi, who could hit in a 360-degree angle from in front of him trying to copy that, he made his blade be his. I'm not gonna explain it, all right? And I'm horrible at explaining shit, all right? I'm gonna just say that everyone who uses moon breathing does also have moons inside their attacks. Right? Okay. Now, the oldest, who looks the most like his father now, would be attacking as the blade would fix itself as he dodged over a moon slash, as it would cleave the house in half. And he would have kicked Yoriichi. He would have kicked Michikatsu or Kokoshibo into the crumbling house, as he would spam shoot the blades, the shards into there again. As he would say, Form 502, demonic blade crossfire. Well, demonic shard crossfire. Some shit. Yeah, demonic shard crossfire. Basically, it's shooting like in an X formation, and then like coming back around. Like it shoot out an X and then shoot back in an X, and then keep going through that. Yeah. And that's when Kokoshibo would run at him, ignoring all of the shards that's stabbing into him and slowly draining his power. The blade would fix itself as the two would rush at each other, and he would impale Kokoshibo with the blade. And Kokoshibo would swing up as the blade would stab into his, like, it would cut off the guy's left arm. But he didn't care as he'd swing up and then elbow Kokoshibo in the gut, and then he'd kick him away. He'd realize that he's off balance now because he's lost an arm. That he wouldn't be right. So he'd start to lean his body more towards the left. He'd lean his body more towards the left unconsciously. And so him not realizing that someone else had just come to intervene in this fight as he had felt Kokoshibo's power weaken. This would be Muzan, as Muzan would rush in, but Muzan would just barely dodge a shard that would miss his face by an inch. As the guy would say, "Stay out of this. This is a family ordeal." And he would keep rushing at Kokoshibo. His swings are becoming sloppy. But he had successfully made his attacks reach all the way up to 600 forms. And he was slowly dying now. But he didn't care. He was still holding the blade as the shards would shoot out at both Muzan and Kokoshibo. But the two were easily dodging now since he had no real control over it. His eyes were even barely open. And the two would stand over him. And he'd smirk as he'd say, Form 601. As Kokoshibo would stab him through the throat. But his last words would come out. Blade. Extendus. The blade would extend out and pierce through both Muzan and Kokoshibo. And they would realize their power is draining quickly as the blade would start to draw in this dark energy from them. And the energy would flow into, the oldest son as he would start to demonify, he would start to turn into a demon as he no longer had any willpower left to live. And the blade was corroding him. The shards would fly out of the two and wrap around him as he would start to smirk demonically. And he'd rush the two. As Muzan would feel that since him and Kokoshibo are now greatly weakened, they cannot handle whatever this thing is. And they'd both run for the trees, but the thing made him faster. He would appear in front of them, and the shards would make like claws on his hands as he'd swing it at their faces. They'd both duck, with Kokoshibo cutting the guy's head off. But the head would be pulled back down by the shards as they would be both kicked back into the house, where they would be luckily teleported away by Nakime, who I'ma say should be around as oldest. And only then would he fall over completely dead. His head would roll off his body, but then be reattached by the shards, as the shards would then go back into the blade. Like his head, it was legitimately stitched back on when his head was cut off, and when he'd fall to the ground, it had almost came off, but the shards re-stitched it back on. You might be wondering, how is the shards doing that? It isn't the shards that's in control anymore. He didn't want his siblings and wife to see his headless body, and so he commanded the shards to fix his head back onto his body. And so it did. The next day, the youngest brother and the cousin would arrive, as they would see blood all over the place. they would see like these stitches around his neck, and they would see that he's missing an arm. And then his wife would see it, and their wives would see it, as they did not want this to continue. They prayed and hoped that their husbands wouldn't go and face those two demons, and there would be a note from the shards on the ground, as the blade isn't like fully put back together, like at all. It would say, I've given you time to prepare. Train the next generation and the generation after that. Make multiple Hashira. Get as many people as you can. They're weakened now. They should not be able to continue to fight. Don't go looking for them, because obviously they have a lot of demons. Get stronger. Train train harder. Do not let them win next time you meet. And then the shards would just fall to the ground, unmoving, as the wife would collect every shard and then the blade in this like bag. She would walk off, as the youngest brother, the one on the screen, would carry his oldest brother back to the place that he had sent them. They would now be under a mountain. Well, yeah, they would be like under a cliff. Yeah, like it'd be a cliff overhead of their estate. This would be 3 separate manors. There would be a big mansion-like manor in the middle, one on the right and left, but the two on the right and left are like long, and this one is wide. Not long, not tall, long. Like it goes straight out, and on the left and right they go straight out forwards, and the one in the middle goes straight to the sides. And they don't connect, obviously. And so now we go into Tanjiro and Nezuko's generation. This being 500 years later, obviously. Their father would be a clan's head, like he would be the head of their family. Tanjiro and Nezuko are both prodigies, but not really. See, Tanjiro cannot use breathing styles. He was born unable to. He isn't weak like his father. Him and Nezuko was born with the mark. They both had see-through world, and Tanjiro was a physical monster. Like, really, like a physical monster. He just didn't, like, to kids his age, they couldn't beat him. Nezuko could, though. She was always stronger than him for some reason. He assumed that it was the mark, since every time he would look at her, she, was getting stronger daily, and it felt as if that mark had something to do with it. Now, their father would train them both to use sun breathing, and then he would try to train them both to use moon breathing, to see which one they were more proficient in. And Nezuko easily picked up both, which should be impossible. But it wasn't for her. She just could. She was the only kid that was born with a mark. And no other kid of their generation up in their household, or up in any of the households yet, besides 2 other kids, but they don't have the mark. She was labeled the clan's prodigy. Like the whole clan in general's prodigy. The 2 sons of the Tokito family, aka Yuichiro and Muichiro, were labeled as geniuses, as they both were, like, they would be labeled the twin mist duo. Yeah, that was the first name that came to head. I tried to change it, but I couldn't think of nothing right then. Yeah, we're just gonna call them the mist duo, alright? And the only other prodigy that came from their clan is a sun breather by the name of fuck it, we ain't got a name. He just a random guy. Alright. Now, every year there is a tournament held at the Demon Slayer headquarters. The only time you can enter this tournament is around the ages from 14 to 16. By age 16, that is your last time participating, and the winners always got a huge sum of money, $100,000. Since they're using actual blades and they aren't permitted, I mean, they don't have any, like, you can kill, but obviously, since they're kids, they don't expect them to kill, right? But it has happened before. They just haven't banned it since. It only happened once or twice. And those kids became Hashira. And they were both from the Sugikuni clan. Well, family. Not clan. Like, not the whole clan, but their family. Right? And so, Nezuko, being this mega prodigy, would win as soon as she would join. And Tanjiro, he would just bob and weave against his opponent, before then quitting as he didn't want to fight. Tanjiro would be this happy child. He grew up very happy. Sure, he was a bit jealous that his sister could use breathing styles, but at the same time, he was worried for her. That's why he trained so hard. But Nezuko was always just stronger than him. And so he just always shrugged it off, saying that, I can't use a breathing style, but I still hit hard. You know, that was his motto. I hit hard even if I can't train on the breathing style. I mean, sure, I could die, but they're gonna die, you know? Like regardless of what's gonna happen, they're gonna die. And by the way, this was his resolve when, like when they were younger. And by the way, this is going back a bit. Tanjiro, by age 10, had already killed a demon. Like, he was that much, like, he's that physically strong. But another person had already killed a demon as well. And this would be Yuichiro. I mean, not Yuichiro, Muichiro. And by the way, Tanjiro's feat wasn't given to him. They didn't tell anyone that he did. He just kind of killed it and then went home. His father knew about it, but no one else knew about it. He told his father, who was up waiting for him to return, that he encountered a demon close to their house, so he took his sword and killed it. The father said that he did good, and he asked, did he have any scars? Tanjiro would say, no, I didn't get hit. Now, we're going to go back to Tanjiro's birth. When Tanjiro and Nezuko, well, on both of their births, but when Tanjiro was born, he would have originally had the mark, right? But he would have, by the age of 5 months, was, crawling around one day. And he ended up finding something. Like, he would have crawled away from the manor. And the father, panicking, would look for him, but Nezuko would start to crawl in a direction. This being her first time crawling ever. She would crawl in a direction, and the father would follow her as if something was, or she was telling him to follow. He would pick her up as she would keep trying to go in this direction, and he would find her. Well, he would follow where she was trying to go. He would find Tanjiro holding this blade as his mark was gone. And in that instance, Nezuko would gain her mark. Right? So Tanjiro was originally born with a mark. It looked very reminiscent of Yurichi's, but then it transferred over to Nezuko, whose looked like vines and leaves. It was weird, but it looked quite cool. And everyone liked her mark since everyone's mark was different. Hers was just very unique. And they didn't ask any questions on what happened to Tanjiro's mark, since Tanjiro was always with his father, and they never got to see his mark. They always knew he was a prodigy, but no one ever saw Tanjiro really, since the father was scared that Tanjiro would have grown up with his, curse. But him losing the mark, really, the father was relieved. And when they saw Tanjiro didn't have a mark, they assumed that Nezuko would be the pride of their family. So, by the way, the father hid away the sword. And if you're wondering what sword Tanjiro had found, it was this one. No one had found that blade like for like after the brothers, like after the oldest brother had used it, the younger brother put it up. But after touching it, like I said, you lose all your capabilities to use breathing styles. And so he said, I'm gonna pick up from where my brother left off, since all the memories of the past wielder goes into your head. He saw how his father died. He saw how his brother died. And so he finished what they both were trying to do. Make forms that would not be able to be stopped. And that's exactly what he would do. He would make the last 299 forms. No, I said it. I stopped at 601. So 399 forms. Yeah. Make the last 399 forms, as it would be 1,000 forms. And Tanjiro, who doesn't remember this, like I said, he was a baby. So like I said, he was in the tournament. By the way, he was wearing this. This is something Tanjiro just likes to wear, or at the time liked to wear. He just completely just gave up. He jumped out of the ring, said he was done, and his opponent was pissed. His opponent being Kaigaku. And from this instance on, Kaigaku tried to bully Tanjiro, but Tanjiro was a physical monster, like I said. He didn't know how to fight for real, but he was strong as shit, and one of those hits will knock you down. Knock all of the wind out of your chest, right? And Kaigaku fucked around and found out. As one time he swung on he swung on Nezuko as she was protecting Tanjiro. Nezuko got scared. This is when they were younger, around the ages 9. I'm gonna say around 9. He swung on Nezuko. Tanjiro heard her scream and came running. And before his fist could even connect, Tanjiro would have hit him in the almost at chest, in the side of his hip, and this would have like cracked his hip bone, like right here by your waist, the bone right there. Yeah, it would have cracked that, right? And he would go flying. As when he'd slam, like he'd go flying, he'd slam into a tree, which would crack some of his ribs. And Tanjiro would be looking at Nezuko, telling her it's fine and that Kaigaku isn't gonna be a threat anymore. Kaigaku kept this, like every time he met Tanjiro, he was terrified, but him finding out Tanjiro couldn't use breathing styles, he thought at this next tournament, I'm gonna beat the shit out of him. I might even kill him just cause I can. But Tanjiro weaved and dodged all of his thunder breathing attacks that he had learned from Jigoro. But since he couldn't learn the first form, he was pissed. But Jigoro would have taught him and Zenitsu both a technique. But since he couldn't learn the first form, he only could learn part of it. Since it is heavily dependent on you knowing the first form to even use this technique. The technique, which is something every Demon Slayer has, no matter what breathing style you have. They don't have the same one. I'm going to explain it in a second. But for thunder breathing, it is a lightning cloak. But since, he couldn't use the first form, it's more of lightning pads. Like it only shows up on a certain part of your body when needed. And when the fight started, he tried to hit him with thunder breathing, wouldn't work. So he told Tanjiro he would just fight him heads on, and he would put the blade into a sheath and rush at Tanjiro, who wasn't dumb, as he would swing at Tanjiro, who would dodge, and he fake going to kick him in the leg, in the gut. But that's when he'd spark up the whatchamacallit. But Tanjiro would switch it to a question mark kick and slam it onto his shoulder. And then he'd kick Kaigaku in the chest as he would try to block it again. But this time he would have grabbed Kaigaku and slammed him to the ground. But Kaigaku, who was on the ground, now pissed, would smirk. But you could obviously tell this wasn't a smirk of confidence. He was gonna kill Tanjiro. He made that up. Like in his head, I'm gonna kill him. And he would grip his blade, and Tanjiro would jump off of him into out of bounds, saying, I quit. And he'd just calmly walk away with a smile. As Kaigaku, when I tell you, you could not understand how pissed he was. Like, he was hella pissed, right? And so he would leave, saying that was some bullshit. And his next opponent would be Nezuko. And he would say that since he couldn't kill the brother, he just killed the sister. But Nezuko would like she would dog walk his ass. You feel me? Like she would put him in his place, and this would humiliate Kaigaku. Kaigaku didn't want to fight anymore. He didn't want to be a demon slayer. He would go back and, like in canon, would bully Zenitsu, then leave. He would cut ties with Jigoro and whatchamacallit, obviously going to, yeah, so everything from here would go the same, right? So now we go to when when Nezuko is walking around outside. This is late. She is now 14. I'm gonna say they were 12, but no, I said they was 14. So she'd be around 15 by now. Around this time, everyone had wanted her to take Demon Slayer exams, but she didn't want to. She wanted to stick around to protect her brother, and for some reason, something didn't feel right. So she left the house, and Tanjiro also felt it as he would wake up, and he would smell blood, as well as his father, who would wake up as he would tell Tanjiro to come to him. But first, we'll go to Nezuko, who would encounter Lower 20. Yeah, Lower Moon 20. No. I'm going to stick with the one I was saying last time. She would encounter Lower 1 and Upper 7. Yeah. Now, the Lower Moons aren't as strong as the Upper Moons. We all know this. But he's still pretty powerful. They would have gotten in since they couldn't just walk in, since it's surrounded by what was the trees from I still can't remember. This is my third time trying to record. Well, I recorded it the first time. This is I still don't remember the name of those trees. It's surrounded by those trees that surround the Demon Slayer exam, or whatever the fuck it's called, right? Those trees where the demons can't get out of. And so they jumped off the cliff that's over the manors and then landed inside. That's how they got in. And they were planning to just climb the mountain to get out, right? So Lower 1 would rush at Nezuko with, like I said the last time, he would have clawed nails. Like he could make his his blood demon art is to cover his hands in like this energy that makes like claws, right? And he would swing at Nezuko, who would block, and then she would cut off both his arms using water breathing. And then she'd spin back around and easily cleave his head off with moon breathing, as she did not want to waste time with these demons. As she would rush at Upper 7, but Lower Moon 1, like I said, they're not weak. They are a lot stronger than they were in the original. Lower Moon is crazy. Lower 1, before fully dissipating, would push off the ground just his body. He would grab his head and throw it at Nezuko, as she would be confused until she would see its tongue stick out and it would come out as a dagger, as it would have been covered by the energy, as it would try to stab at her, but she would instantly cut it to pieces. She wasn't playing around with these demons, as the head and tongue would be cut to pieces. And this would, the already pissed off Upper 7 would now be even further pissed off, as the Lower Moon that had just died was his little brother. And, seeing how easily his little bro just got killed, he wasn't going for it. So he rushed at Nezuko with his blood demon art already activated. Yes, an Upper Moon already activating their Demon Slayer. I said Demon Slayer. Their blood demon art on a 15-year-old child. That's OP. So he would rush at her with his now twin katanas. He don't know how to use them, but how he uses them is with his blood demon art. It covers the blades in this viscous substance. It isn't blood, it isn't water, it isn't anything like that. It's just this weird viscous type thing. It's like sludge. He would swing it at Nezuko, And then all of a sudden, multiple blades would come out as it would start to spin at her, like what's it? Like a buzz saw, but like on all angles, like its blade sticking out, and then they'd spin real fast as if it were a buzz saw. Yeah. And so she would block it with her blade, which would almost crack under the force of the multiple blades slamming into it. But she would cleave it in half, and then she would start to cut it to pieces as if it were nothing. She would rush further in to kill the demon, but the demon would just stomp the ground as this liquid would cover the surroundings. It would try to grab her, and she'd jump up, but her shoes would have been stuck inside that viscous, thing, as blades would have been stabbing through the shoes, as she had just barely gotten up free. She would activate her see-through world ability, and she would start using sun breathing. She had perfected sun breathing to the point where she's able to perform all 13 forms in just 10 breaths. She was a mega prodigy, and most of those breaths came from the 13th form, since it's just using every form all at once. And so she would rush in as she would instantly pop the 13th form. She would cut the floor. She would cut at the air. She would keep swinging as she would turn and switch from the 13th form to sun. No. She would continue with the 13th form as she'd get close, and the guy would go to cleave her head off, but she'd switch from the 13th to the 12th form using fake rainbow as she would fade out, and the guy would be confused as she would appear behind it and go to swing at, like, cut its head off using, I forgot which form it was. But yeah, she'd go to use the form, but he'd swing at her, which she would block with the blade, which would this time fully shatter. As she'd go flying, but wouldn't be injured. As she would look at her broken blade, which would be about the same size as the one Tanjiro used against Ruri in canon. She would rush in at the demon, but the demon would have been faster. He was done playing around. He remembered how easily and brutally Nezuko had killed his brother. And now, he was gonna torture her. That's what he would say to her face. And she would be horrified as he would easily kick the blade out of her hand, and then he would have stabbed it into her shoulder. That's where Tanjiro and his dad would wake up smelling the blood. They wouldn't hear a cry of help or anything, as he would have used the sludge to cover her mouth. He would have pulled the blade out and went to attack Nezuko again, only to have both of his arms cut off. As we see Tanjiro now holding this blade, the same blade he would have held when he was a child. Now, we go back to when Tanjiro was talking to his father. Tanjiro's father would ask Tanjiro, does he know why he cannot use a breathing style? And Tanjiro would say, no, he just assumed he couldn't. His father would show him the blade as he would tell Tanjiro to grab it. And Tanjiro would, as instantly the cheerful child that was Tanjiro would now be lost, as we'd have this cold, now cool, calm, and collected Tanjiro standing, as he'd say, I remember. And the father would be confused as he'd ask Tanjiro, what does he remember? By the way, the father, when he picked up the sword, since he already couldn't use a breathing style, it did nothing to him. It couldn't give him anything. It didn't give him memories or anything. He was stronger than what the blade would, his mental strength was already stronger strong enough that the blade couldn't do anything to him. Tanjiro, as a child, it tried to take over him, but for some reason, that child's mental fortitude, his mental fortitude was just impressively strong. And when he lost his Demon Slayer mark, the calm baby Tanjiro turned into this laughing child. That's why Tanjiro is so nice now. He gained all of the niceness from the past three wielders of the blade. Yurichi, the oldest and youngest brothers. He gained all of their happiness. But now that he's regained the blade, all of that's gone. Tanjiro is calm, cool, and collected now. He's not the bubbly, laughing kid anymore. He's serious and he's finna go save his sister. Those are the words that would be spoken as he'd vanish and appear next to his, sister, cutting off the demon's arms, as he would cut all the sludge off of her and then grab her, jumping away, as he'd ask if she's okay, and he'd see the wound on her shoulder. As for the first time ever, Tanjiro would be pissed. Like, he was mad when he saw that Kaigaku was about to hit his sister. That's why he hit him so hard. But Tanjiro was now pissed. He was not gonna show mercy to this demon. And by now, all the demon slayers from the other two clans that were in the village that they protect the village that's under the cliff that they are on. Okay, so they're on a mountain. And under the mountain is a village that they protect. And above them is a giant cliff that's on the top of the mountain, right? Good. All right. That's how you. Yeah, I had to explain that. So back to what I was saying. Tanjiro would turn around as he would glare at the demon and say, "I am going to kill you." And the other demon slayers, all the other children who are with their parents that are demon slayers, since the children also aren't, demon slayers yet. They are training to be, and they had just got their first kills, since they are all now 15. They don't, obviously, since they're preparing them to become demon slayers. Hold on, my bad. I had to do something. Now, there would be no time for any other thing. They would all hear a loud boom. And by the way, this is from when the demon had hit Nezuko into, And so, he would have hit her into a wall, and it would have crumbled, making a loud boom noise. And then he would, yeah. But, like I said, they would start rushing this way. Demon slayers from both of the clans would be ahead of their children who are running behind. They have great stamina already for 15-year-old children who are trying to become demon slayers. They have great stamina. It's just the parents were a lot faster, as they would arrive and see a head on the ground and Tanjiro standing over it with Nezuko behind him, holding her bleeding shoulder. The demon's eyes would say upper 7. And this would shock all of the people who arrived. As when the kids arrived, they just see a demon on the ground. The head would have already disintegrated and the body was disintegrating. The people would ask Tanjiro who killed the demon, as he'd say, "I don't know." And he'd sheath his blade, turning to his sister. As he'd rush Nezuko to the medical unit, which is up in their town, he'd take him there. But the father would show up and he'd have acupuncture needles. And he'd say he'd fix up Nezuko. Why? Because Nezuko was controlling her breathing, which slowed down her, the bleeding. She controlled her breathing, which slowed down the bleeding. Yeah, breathing. I'm pretty sure I said breathing. Anyways, yeah, like I was saying, she controlled her breathing to slow the bleeding in her body. Why? Because Demon Slayer, I don't fucking know. They just do it, okay? And yeah, he would use acupuncture. He'd fix her up, and Nezuko would surprisingly heal quickly. In 4 days, the wound had completely closed. And they didn't use stitches because they didn't want to leave a mark. And Nezuko didn't care for stitches. She didn't want to have marks on her body. Since, in her words, having marks would make her ugly. And Tanjiro would say nothing would ever make his sister ugly. They are both very close. Not like that, but They are very close. Again, not in that sense of the yeah. So they are now both 16 years old, and Tanjiro would have perfected all 1,000 forms of his new breathing style, which still didn't have a name. And his father would ask, like, why was he doing all these tricks and techniques with the blade? He would say he was making his own breathing style, since no one else knew about the breathing style for the sword. They just assumed he didn't have one, so he had to lie and say he was making one. And so they would ask him, what is it called? He would say, the 1,000 demonic breathing style. No, the 1,000 demonic breath style. Yeah, that sounds better. Why the fuck did I say better like that? He would say that sounds better. And he would say the 1,000 demonic breath style. And his father would ask, does it have something to do with the sword having 1,000 shards? Did you really make 1,000 techniques because it has 1,000 shards? And at first he was going to say, no, I didn't make them. I just, but then he'd stop himself. He'd say, well, I had to match the name, the shards, and the amount of techniques. So obviously I have 1,000 forms. And he would say to his father, plus I didn't want anyone copying my techniques. Obviously not telling his father that most of the techniques he uses in his breathing style are very reminiscent to breathing styles that are already made. Like his first form, which is I forgot what I named it. What was it? Demonic breathing, first form. Demonic whip. Yeah, demonic whip slash. That's what it was called. Basically, it's just a copy of love breathing, where you know how Mitsuri uses her blade as a whip. Yeah, it's basically a copy of that. And the reason he can copy these techniques is because for some reason he knows every breathing style. Like as soon as he touched the blade, he gained knowledge of every breathing style. And so he just used them with the current techniques that were already made, and it makes them easier to use because the people who made the techniques before, which he knows is Yurichi's oldest and youngest son, they didn't perfect them. They just made rough techniques since Yurichi was in a battle and only could make 100 techniques. No, I'm gonna say Yurichi, yeah, I'm gonna change it a bit. Yurichi made 500. His oldest son made 300. And the youngest made the remaining 200. Yeah, 500 for Yurichi. The 300, that's, yeah, 800. Yeah, like that. So, scratch whatever I said for the oldest son. Because, Yurichi is he OP as shit. So, I'm going to say 500 techniques since his brother and his fight in this one lasted 3 days. No, I'm going to say it lasted a week. Yeah. This would give him time to create those techniques. And I'm gonna say they didn't have breaks throughout that whole fight. They just constantly fought. And an 80-year-old Yurichi, who was obviously dying and losing breath, the only reason he was still being alive is every time he made contact with his brother with the blade, his body healed and he gained like extra time limit on his life. The only reason he died after is because the 500 techniques he created, his brother just started avoiding him. And when his brother slowed down, this being Yurichi, he Koko Shibo used his techniques to counter it. Basically, that's when he unlocked his blood demon art. Yeah, that this way he kept Yurichi at a distance and he couldn't get close enough to hit him with the blade. That's when he was forced to use ranged attacks. But these ranged attacks caused the shards to be away from Yurichi's blade, and, well, Koko Shibo went in for the finisher, but it didn't work, as that's when he used, the technique that I said the son made. He did not make that. I'm going to say Yurichi made it. The cross blades, where I said it was going in like an X. Yeah, he made that. Yeah, that was his last technique as he died while using the technique, as it just kind of felt like the shards fell to the ground as he ran out of stamina and he couldn't breathe anymore. He died on his feet the blade retracted the shards to itself, and Kokoshibo feeling as if something ominous was about to happen, slashed Yoriichi like in canon. Now, we go back to now where a 16-year-old Tanjiro and Nezuko are at the tournament, and this year, since he lost to Nezuko, he was thinking of forfeiting during their fight, but he would hear that he's going up against Tanjiro, and he would be excited. He doesn't know about Tanjiro's blade or Tanjiro killing an upper moon. No one knows of it besides the elders of their clan and obviously the Kamado family who took it up to the master of the Demon Slayer court is still being Ubuyashiki, however you want to say his name, right? He would take the remnants of the body to Ubuyashiki or Ubuyashiki, like I said. He would take him the remains. He would tell him that it was an upper moon. They would have the crow that was, that was around watching the fight. He would say that, and the youngest took down lower one. So they would give them the money for the 2 kills. And since they had taken down an upper moon, which no one had done for hundreds of years, they would get a lot of money. And by a lot of money, they would get $2 million for the lower moon. And for the upper moon, they would get, I'm going to say $1 billion since it's an upper moon. No, I'm going to say $500 million. Yeah. Because why not? I'm going to say 10 million for the lower moon and 500 million for the upper. Yeah. No, because then you make way. I'm going to say 50 million for the lower moon. And it was 500 million for the upper moon. There we go. Don't ask how that's fair. I don't fucking know. And I don't care. Now, this money would be used like for the Kamado part of the family. They would occasionally hand money over to the Sugikuni clan since they have multiple Hashira inside of the Demon Slayer court. The Kamado family has never produced a Hashira, but they have produced a lot of normal Demon Slayers of the high, like they are high-ranking Demon Slayers, just not Hashira. And the father, who was a Hashira, that's the reason why they are still known. They are still in second place, since they are Hashira. But since they now the Tokito family now has 2 Hashira in there, this being Muichiro and Yuichiro. They are, like I said, their nickname is the Mist Duo. By the way, there are hundreds of Hashira in the Demon Slayer Corps, and these Hashira are, there's a lot of them. And by the way, Guillaume is in 3rd place. The 2 strongest are the firstborn of, like, he is one of the he didn't want to become the head of the Yoriichi clan. The Sugikuni clan, the Sugikuni family. He didn't want to become the head, so he chose to stay a Hashira. He is age 30, and he is still he is a Hashira. His son, who is age 19, I'm gonna say 19. His son is 19 years old, and he is also a sun-breathing user. No, I'm gonna say he's a moon-breathing user. He uses moon breathing. He is the 2nd strongest Hashira. The 3rd strongest is Guillaume, and then there is other people from the Sugikuni clan, and all this other shit. But there is no Kamado family Hashira at all. And the Tokito family, which is now, like, just now about to become second strongest in, clan wise. Like, out of those 3 clans, they are now 2nd strongest since the 2 have now become Hashira. They offered to make Nezuko a Hashira, and she declined. And their father wasn't going to force her to become a Hashira. And so that's why, that's why they, since Nezuko still isn't even a Demon Slayer, they are in 3rd place, strength-wise, since no other family can still beat the Kamado family. And The twins of the Tokiso family, they can't beat Nezuko in a fight, but since they're a Hashira, their family is ranked higher. That's how the hierarchy works in this world. But since other families can't beat Nezuko, by the way, they can beat Nezuko at the like if they fought her at the same time, but they just can't beat Nezuko if they try to run the ones with her. They can't. Nezuko is too powerful in this one. Now, we like I said, we are at the tournament of this year's thing, and Tanjiro's friend would come up to him. This is one of his friends that is to die soon. He was born with the same sickness as his as Tanjiro's father, but since he was young when he got it, his body couldn't handle it, and he's to die in a year. Tanjiro had made his life fun. He truly enjoyed his time with Tanjiro, and he decided to give Tanjiro an outfit he specifically made for Tanjiro. This outfit would be this, the black and purple fit. I had to incorporate it somehow, as Tanjiro would look at it and instantly go and put it on, since he loved the color scheme of black and purple. Hence why his outfit here was black, purple, and with white at the bottom. He couldn't find any black pants, and this was the only thing the clan was offering. And they wouldn't allow him since he was still in training, and they didn't see him as one of the students truly. He couldn't choose what he wore. They gave him that outfit, but Tanjiro doesn't care about those rules anymore. Tanjiro is way too strong to listen to what those weaklings have to say. Is what he would say, but Tanjiro is way too cool, calm, and collected. He does not want to start an argument. But wearing this outfit that his friend gave him, he'd take on the whole clan if he had to. And this would kind of scare his friend, but he would say that he can see Tanjiro has gotten stronger, and he's looking forward to seeing Tanjiro's fight. This friend is going to be very important. Alright, so Tanjiro would go and he would be in the stands. He'd tell his friend that he wants him to cheer him on. And the friend would say he got him, and he'd hold out his thumbs up, but he'd cough a bit as he'd say, "I'll be up there." And he'd point to a spot that's seemingly vacant. His parents weren't around since, they didn't want to come to the thing. But they allowed for him to go since, they knew how close Tanjiro and they knew how close he was with the Kamado family and Tanjiro specifically. Nezuko is close with the older sister to the boy who became a demon slayer, and she is ranked Konoe already. And Kanao is also her friend. She's friends with Kanao, who is also she had been a part of the tournament before the two had fought. Nezuko obviously won, and they became close. She basically pulled a Midoriya. She pulled a Midoriya where she told her that she gets to decide her own fate, and the coin doesn't get to decide what she had. Like the same thing how Midoriya told Todoroki, it's your flames, your fire, not his. Basically she pulled that on the coin. So her and Nezuko are best friends. And she wasn't in slavery or whatever. She is actually part of the Kocho family. Her and Aoi. I do not know how to pronounce her name, so if I said that right, this is the first. And if not, you can flame me in the comments. I'll take it. I'll take that one to the chin. But I don't know how to pronounce her name correctly. And Kane is not dead in this one. She is still a Hashira as well as Shinobu. Now we go to the first fight, which is Tanjiro and Kaigaku. And this time, Kaigaku is not letting Tanjiro leave this stadium. Why? Because he had declared a war battle. This is a war match. You can only leave if one of you, if both of you agree that the fight is over. If one of you says that the fight is over and the other one doesn't, the fight isn't over. So you can't just jump out of the ring, since they can chase you all around the village if they need to. Right? And Tanjiro would say, that's fine. And he would step up and he would look at his blade and then pull his he would pull my bad. He would pull his hoodie over his head as his eyes would go red. Now we are gonna call these eyes killer eyes. Not saying that, he goes psycho, but these are his killer eyes, right? Nobody else in the show has them, by the way. This is just something he can do. And at first people thought he was a demon, but he's standing in the sun, so they just thought it was something that he could do. They assumed that it was his new breathing style since everyone heard that he made his own breathing style. Besides Kaigaku, who would say that you're a demon, as Tanjiro would just point up at the sun and he'd say, "You must be some kind of idiot. I walked on here without a hood into the sun, nothing happened. I put on my hood. I go to activate my breathing style, and now I'm a demon." Come on now, bro. You cover your body with lightning. Don't give me that bullshit. Kaigaku, who is now feeling a bit embarrassed, would say, "Shut the hell up and let's just fight." As he'd rush at I almost call him Midoriya. Who the fuck is Tujiro? He would rush at Tanjiro with his blade, as he'd say thunder breathing, but Tanjiro would say 1,000 demonic breath style, first form. 1,000 demonic breath style, first form. Yeah, I was right. My bad. As he would start to draw the blade, as Kaigaku would rush at him using the second form. As before Kaigaku could even finish, Tanjiro would say, whip blade slash, demonic whip slash. Yeah, that's what it was. Demonic whip slash. As when the blade would be fully drawn, it would glow purple, and then he'd swing it as it would turn into shards. And then those shards would cut across Kaigaku's chest as Tanjiro would swing it back around as it would slash across his back. And Tanjiro would repeatedly use the first form. As then he'd jump back and land, as he would land in this positioning here as the blade would reform itself. As Tanjiro would say, "Now, second form." Second form. Demonic thrust. As he'd rush at Kaigaku, who had, after the first after the first 4 cuts, he would use the lightning armor on his chest and back. Like I said, he can only use it on a certain part of his bodies at a time, and at most he can only use it at 2 spots. At first, when they first fought, he could only use it at 1, but currently he can use it on 2 spots, so he can cover his front and back. That's it, like his chest and his back, but that was it. And he heard thrust, so he assumed, okay, he's aiming at my chest. And Tanjiro would rush in as he'd slam into the barrier as sparks would go off. As he'd smirk, as he'd say, second form plus 46th form. As he'd say, demonic thrust plus demonic thrust barrage. As he'd jump back and start jumping to the side as if he were cloning himself. Multiple variations of himself would pop up. But the clan heads who are all there would see that this is just after images, and any Hashira that was there watching would also see that this is just these are after images. But normal people, he's cloning himself, and Nezuko can see, she can barely see that these aren't clones, these are after images, since she also has see-through world. And her father would say that she's getting better, and if she can read that much speed that Tanjiro is going at, then, well, if she can only barely read his speed, then she should know that her brother is a lot stronger than her by now. And she would say that she knows that, and that her brother had always been stronger than her. And she would say that she could tell that Tanjiro was always holding himself back unconsciously. And I knew this when I first saw him hit Kaigaku when we were younger. That's why she started training so hard. Because she wanted to thank Tanjiro back by protecting him. That's why she chose to take on those 2 demons that night, since the demons were close to their manor and she didn't want their family to get hurt. But, she was realistically thinking about Tanjiro. Tanjiro couldn't protect himself if she died and then the rest died. He would just die and be eaten by demons. They would probably even torture him. That was the only thing going through her head. Not her own survival, but saving and protecting Tanjiro. But seeing Tanjiro fight now, it it just proves that she was right. He is strong and he can protect himself. She was happy and she was even crying out of happiness for her brother. As Kanao would be patting her back, as she also felt Tanjiro was weird, but seeing him now, she assumed that Tanjiro is just finally getting serious since he isn't the laughing, goofy kid anymore. He's a more serious, calm, like his aura is completely different. It did a complete 180. And Shinobu, who was there, would say that that boy that he's fighting is going to get hit multiple times. And that's exactly what would happen, as Kaigaku would see hundreds of blades flying his way. And these would just be shards of the blades that Tanjiro made. And these are like they're made into these tiny swords, and they're flying at him. They're making small cuts and scratches across him. He's not aiming to kill Kaigaku. He's aiming to, force him to say he surrenders, and Tanjiro would say, "Oh, I accept your surrender." But Kaigaku, being the arrogant bastard he is, he would yell as he'd start trying to use different thunder breathing forms, but the blades wouldn't end, as he'd try to parry and use his technique to block most of them while he tries to block the rest, but it wouldn't work, as he'd gain a cut across his cheek, one across his leg, one on his arm, and he'd gain multiple more. He would look like a sitting duck in this flurry of attacks, as Tanjiro just constantly circled him at this speed, as then Tanjiro would appear under him and kick him into the air as a huge blade made out of shards, and like they would be spread out as the energy from them would make the blade huge. And Tanjiro would be in the air above him as he'd say, 100th form, giant demonic blade, as he would swing this blade effortlessly. Why? Because it's still just the normal weight of the blade that he was originally holding. It's just the energy of the blade is making it look like a huge blade. And so he'd spin in the air and then slam this blade down upon Kaigaku's back, which is still being covered by the lightning thing. And he knew he wasn't going to die if he hit it, but he wasn't expecting to crack it and then completely shatter it, as sparks would fly through Kaigaku, but they would turn black, and Tanjiro would notice this. Something about this kid isn't right. And so the sword would slam into Kaigaku's back, as the sparks that flew through him would change from yellow to black, like immediately, but only Tanjiro caught this, as his blade would shrink back as he'd land before Kaigaku and sheath his blade, as he'd say, "Listen, I don't want to end you." And Tanjiro would be standing over him like this, except for no blade. He would have blood on his shirt, well, on his jacket. And his friend would be up in the stands cheering for him. As that's when Tanjiro would sense something behind him. This would be an invisible demon. As unbeknownst to him, well, unbeknownst to the demon that was watching him, Tanjiro had peeped this demon already. He knew it was there. He also knew Kokoshibo was there with this demon. And Kokoshibo had left, as he always cheered and rooted for Tanjiro. He was rooting for the underdog, Tanjiro. But he for some reason was only rooting for Tanjiro to always win, even though Tanjiro always lost. It's because Tanjiro reminded him of himself. By the way, Tanjiro looks like Seven. He has black hair and black eyes, but yeah, his eyes are can switch between black and red now. Yeah. And seeing Tanjiro win would put a smile on Kokoshibo's face, but the blade he was holding would let Kokoshibo know everything he needs to know. I will eventually have to kill this kid, but for now, I'm proud of you. And he would leave, as that's when where was I going with this? Oh, right. That's when the demon would have jumped down under Kokoshibo's orders. He'd say, "Kill the kid." And Kaigaku, who was semi-unconscious on the ground, by the way, it's afternoon now. They had been fighting. Their fight had taken up so much time because Tanjiro wasn't trying to kill him. He was making small cuts and scratches on him. He wasn't trying to kill him. So Basically, Tanjiro had been breathing and using these two forms at the same time, which already shocked people, but for hours. And he was only making small cuts, which everyone knew, meaning he was just dragging out the fight till Kaigaku said he quit. But eventually it was late, like this moon was coming up. It was dark, but it wasn't dark, you know? Like the sun just wasn't up enough to, you know. And that's when the demon struck. It made its move just then. It went and attacked at Tanjiro, who would instantly, like, he'd swing his blade and cleave it clean in half, like down the middle, and then cleave again, cutting the head off, as the two halves of the head would become visible, as blood from its body would fly into Kaigaku's mouth. Why? This demon was made from Kokoshiro's powers. It's not an actual demon. Well, it is, but it isn't. It's not a person. It's more of a doll made from Kokoshiro's blood. And that blood had fell into Kaigaku's mouth. And he swallowed it. He would do anything to become stronger than Tanjiro. Even if it means becoming a demon, he will kill him. And Tanjiro, who didn't notice this, would, like, he would have kicked the demon away, which was somehow still alive, as he'd go to swing at it, but then he'd feel this dark energy behind him as he'd turn and he'd draw the blade as he'd make a shield behind him. Third form, demonic shield, as it would be the shard shield that Seven made to protect him in 13. Kaigaku would have slammed into him using Black Thunder, as he'd ask, what the hell is that? As he would be wearing this Black Thunder suit with claws around his body. Basically what thunder breathing can do, except for demonic. Like, yeah, it's black. As he'd slam his claws repeatedly into it, as Nezuko would have cut down the doll, as she'd say, it's not a thing. It's a doll made of demonic blood, meaning he's now a demon. And she'd rush and spin at almost at Kokoshibo, at Kaigaku. But Tanjiro would stop her using his shard shield, as she would be drawn into it as a lightning strike would slam down where she just was. As he'd say, these armor suits that demon slayers get are so fucking unfair. It allows them to summon the elements that they have at will. The only thing it is draining, but now that he's a demon and he has his armor suit, this will make it so much harder to face him. Sis, let's jump this guy. And everyone would be confused because, you know, Tanjiro was easily working him. Why would he need to jump Kaigaku? But this was just Tanjiro's way of testing his sister, and she would know this as she'd nod. She'd say, I'll keep up with you, I promise. And they'd rush at Kaigaku with the shards flying at him in an X mark. By the way, I'm gonna go back to look at the name of it because I already forgot it. But yeah, Tanjiro would use the shards in an X like an X formation, but he was not hitting Kaigaku the way he thought he would. Like, they were just bouncing off. And so Tanjiro would smirk as his blade was drawn to something, and he'd see the doll, and so he'd backflip off as Nezuko would have taken Kaigaku's thoughts. As everyone thought that Tanjiro was running away after he couldn't do anything. They'd start booing at him, and demon slayers were, like, you know, Shinobu and them were getting ready to jump in. But a lightning cage would be formed around them, around the, you know, the three, as I almost said Kakucho. Kaigaku would say, you're not running away, you bastard. But Tanjiro would stab into the doll as this dark energy would envelop the blade, as all of the blood that was in it would vanish. Like, the blood would vanish as well, as he would gain this purple aura around him. And this would be Tanjiro's variation of his armor suit. By the way, Nezuko was already wearing hers. She would be wearing the sun-breathing version. Alright, hold on. I'm going to show you the two variations of the Alright, so sun-breathing looks... Okay, this is sun-breathing. You see the sun behind her? Well, behind, not her, but behind Yorichi. Yeah, that's what that is the sun breathing variation. It's not all of them are armor suits. So she'd be using this one, which is sun breathings, and she'd also be using moon breathings, which is an armor suit. It's armor suit that has multiple crescent moons around it, and she'd be fighting him on equal terms, but not beating him. So yeah, basically that. And Tanjiro's is just, well, this purple aura. They don't know what it does until it would swirl around him, and that's when he would swirl the blade at Kaigaku once more, who would laugh and say, "It didn't work the first time. What makes you think it'll work this time?" As his body would be cleaved in half. The blade gets stronger, as the host does, but the host gets stronger when the blade gets stronger. He'd say this, and nobody would understand what he's talking about. He just sounds like a madman. And Tanjiro would say, "Listen, my armor suit is weird," and he'd swing his hands, clearing all the dust off him, as it'd just be this thin, well, now thin purple aura around his body. As he'd rush forward and he'd keep cutting Kaigaku into pieces, but Kaigaku would already have escaped. Why? He would have connected his body into the lightning cage, and then the lightning would shoot off into the air. And Tanjiro would shoot off after it using the shards to push off the ground. As he'd retract them, as he'd point the blade at it, as he'd say 100th form, as he'd reach out his right arm, as the blade would grow huge, and he'd spin and slam it down on the lightning streak, which would split it in half, but it would reattach to itself and fly off. As Kagaku's lower body would still be left there, and Tanjiro would throw his blade into the lower half, which was disintegrating, you know, because that's what demons do. And so, he wanted the extra power, because now that he knows that he can get stronger from, absorbing the darkness and blood of demons, he would absorb this darkness as it would go into his blade. And by the way, the reason why Tanjiro was already OP when he first, is because this blade has already absorbed the blood of Muzan and Kokoshiba, and then Kokoshiba once more. Of course, it's going to be OP. And it made Tanjiro OP because, like I said, when the blade gets stronger, this host gets stronger, and when the host gets stronger, the stronger the blade is, right? It don't make sense, but it really does. It makes a lot of sense to me. So the stronger the blade gets, the stronger the host will get, and the more durable and stronger the host gets, the sharper the blade is. All right, yeah, let's put it that way. Okay, so the stronger Tanjiro is physically, the sharper the blade is, and the more durable it is, so it can penetrate through harder objects. The stronger the blade becomes by absorbing demons, darkness, and blood, the more powerful his attacks and strikes become, or the purple energy Tanjiro has. That is the only way I can explain that. This part is still going to end up being close to 2 hours. Well, no, because it's almost done. It'll probably just be an hour and 40, or an hour and 40 something, but not an hour and 50 minutes long, or not almost 2 hours long. It was an hour and 59 minutes long if I would have put the two together in a couple of seconds. But yeah, let me go ahead and finish this off. So after this, Tanjiro would go down and grab his blade, as it would have absorbed all the blood and darkness of it, and then this huge purple aura that would have been recessed into the blade would have now flown into Tanjiro, and then it would recede back into the blade, as his thin aura that was around him would be a lot brighter, but then it'd just be this thin aura again as it fade away into the blade. As he'd say, "I'm starting to like this blade." And he'd look at Nezuko, who would be at her limit since she had used both the sun breathing and moon breathing, techniques together. By the way, like I said, not all things have armor suits. So like protective forms, like water breathing, it's an armor suit. But it also had Tomioka made 13 the 11th form dead calm, or 12th form. It was something like that. I'm pretty sure it was 11th form. Yeah, so his 11th form, which is dead calm, which made his armor suit useless to him, right? So instead of his armor suit, Tomioka, his water breathing has evolved. He now has his crap, I just had it in my head. Crap, what was it? Basically, whenever he uses dead calm, or whenever he uses any breathing style while using his armor suit, which, like, he still has it, but whenever he uses any like any form while using the armor suit, it makes it to where he has these water clones, and you cannot tell the difference between them unless you have, see-through world, or but well, that's because you can't sense the difference between them. They are perfect clones. Yeah. And this isn't a water breathing form. Like, every time he uses a breathing style, a clone is made, and it does the same breathing style as him, like, perfectly, and they always work well together. But when using dead calm, he makes up to 5 clones. And dead calm isn't just a technique that just stays to protect him. Well, I mean, it isn't just oh, I activate it, it protects me from attacks, then it vanishes. No, it's like a domain expansion. It's in this area, and it makes multiple clones. Once he leaves the area, it still stays so he can go back to it, but it drains him while he uses it. Yeah. But now that I've explained this, I will explain how other things work, like how or what other techniques have, like sound breathing. It makes it to where you can fly. Yeah, it gives you like boosters on your feet. Like, it causes air to like push out of your feet constantly, and so it makes you faster. With sound breathing, it allows you to make explosions without having to hit your blades together or hit your techniques against other techniques that you've already created. Like, you can just create explosions by swinging into the air. With stone breathing, it's obviously an armor suit, but it can also make armor, like, it can also make mud walls or earth walls to protect you from attacks in front of you. With let's see, with love breathing, it makes a heart shaped shield in front of you, and you can shoot, and it protects you omnidirectional. So it'll like, if an attack is coming from below, it'll block the attack below. Like, it moves, and it moves at however fast the user can swing their arm, it moves that speed. And since Mitsuri is a Hashira who can swing pretty fast with her blade, it obviously moves quite fast. With insect breathing, it's something called insect domain. It does not give her an armor suit, but if they touch any of the butterflies in her domain, like Tomioka's, except for they instantly become poisoned, and it's a poison that nobody has a cure for. And no matter if you're a demon or like what rank of demon you are, it's deadly. It doesn't instantly kill like upper moons, but it'll instantly kill a lower moon. And then, like, yeah, so other techniques have other, yeah, stuff like that. So, and beast breathing, which is, Inosuke's stuff, it summons a boar that attacks with him. Yeah, so techniques will be explained later on, and I probably won't even get to use all 1,000 forms that I have prepared in my head. I'm probably even gonna forget a lot of the techniques, but I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna type them out on my phone so I'll remember all 1,000, and then I'll save it. Like, I'll put them. Yeah. But for right now, and now that I'm done, goodbye.